The LA Clippers played in the second night of a back-to-back in a massive game against the New Orleans Pelicans with the Pels right on our tails for the 4 seed, and it continued to be the same story. But besides that one game we won against the Pelicans on the road this season, we have not been able to beat them. They just have our number. Why is that? Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You were locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, and in my 19th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more NBA, LA Clipper, LA sports content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And my question for you is, what do you think a series in a 4-5 matchup would be between us and the Pels with the Clippers having home court? So we have home court. What would that series be? Now, we're going to talk about this game and then look at the Atlanta Hawks game on Sunday in this episode. And I want to first off, before we do anything, apologize for how late this episode is coming out. Obviously, we're supposed to do Monday through Friday, but when we do have a weekend game, I tend to take one of the days in the week off and then do an extra episode on the weekend. And this is that extra episode. That's supposed to be the 5th one of the week. But the problem is, it was supposed to come out on Saturday because the game was on Friday night. And I had a very hectic day Saturday. It was the first time that the park I coach at was hosting All-Stars, and my All-Star team was playing. And we had a terrible first game, so I was so all in and trying to figure out a way to compete in that second game. And we did. Almost had them, but a little short-handed, so fell a bit short. But the point is, I'm apologizing for releasing the episode so late. I had to make sure I did it before I drive to Staples Center on Sunday for the Hawks game. So let's get right into it, like the Dome. The Clippers have a problem, and that problem is Zion Williamson. I don't know how else there is to what other way there is to put it. No James Harden in this game. Obviously, no Russell Westbrook, who is still missing with that hand injury. But we know that the problem is Zion. He was a problem before we made the Harden trade, and he's even more of a problem now that we traded away some big front court depth. Now, in this game, we saw PJ Tucker play 24 minutes, which was the second most of any bench player after Norman Powell, because of Zion specifically. And you know what? I think PJ Tucker had his best defensive game as a Clipper. I counted 4 strips in the first half on Zion from PJ Tucker alone. He took a charge. He was playing good, active on-ball defense. He actually hit 2 threes in the game, but there were still times where they were letting him shoot or just letting him catch the ball, doubling somebody and leaving him open, and we wouldn't really take advantage of it. So offensively, still not very good, but defensively, he definitely was helpful in this game with Zion and taking blows to the chest and just being an irritant. He had 6 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 blocks. 1 turnover, which was a horrendous pass. I think that was towards the end of the second quarter, on 2 for 3 shooting, and all those shots were threes. But the thing about Zion is, to start the game, we had Kawhi guarding him, and then he was guarding Kawhi. Valanciunas and Zoo were obviously matched up with each other. You had Terrence Mann guarding CJ McCollum, Paul George on Brandon Ingram, and then Bones Highland, who's starting in place of James Harden, on Herb Jones. And on the other side, you had Herb Jones guarding Paul George, Brandon Ingram guarding Bones Highland, and CJ McCollum guarding Terrence Mann to start. And of course, a lot of those wing-to-wing pick and rolls are going to be switched from both teams. But the interesting thing was about this game, it's not necessarily interesting or breaking news, but typically the Clippers will switch 1 through 4. With Zion being more of a traditional bruiser power forward, we won't switch 1 through 4. We actually switch the 5-4 pick and roll, which means if Zion has the ball and he's playing power forward and Valanciunas, the 5, comes and sets a screen, we switch Zoo onto Zion and Kawhi onto Valanciunas, because we believe that Kawhi can hold his own in the post and on the boards against Jonas, and because Zion, the advantage that he takes or the advantage that he has on mostly everybody, is his strength. Now, what makes him such a nightmare matchup is against guys like Zoo. He's got the speed advantage and the explosion to his advantage. So there truly is, when Zion's at his best, not a true good matchup for the guy. That's why he was so hyped up coming out of Duke. Now, this season he's been pretty healthy, and the one thing I have to really give him credit for is he's improved his defense massively. Not saying he was locking anybody up, but he had some possessions guarding Paul George and Kawhi where he held his own. And before, he used to be absolutely atrocious. Now, does that say something a little bit about Kawhi and Paul not getting the step on Zion? Maybe a little, but for the most part, I tend to give Zion more credit because I still believe they were getting good shots off of him, creating space, but he just wasn't like a cone or a liability like he was in the past. As far as the Clippers' defensive strategies, we were in drop. Actually, no, in the beginning of the game, we were showing Zoo on the Ingram pick and roll because we didn't want Brandon Ingram walking into mid-ranges like he usually does against us and getting a rhythm, so we had Zoo show and recover. And we were also showing and recovering with Bones so he wouldn't switch onto Ingram or CJ. Now, Norm, that wasn't the case. We were letting Norm switch onto Ingram and CJ, and it wasn't too problematic, but it made me nervous. As far as the Zion being guarded by Zoo thing, just frequently, it wasn't even the first quarter. Our defense was actually exceptional in the first quarter. We were up 22-20 after one. It was a very solid defensive performance by the Clippers through the first half. Second half, it kind of fell off, but we were down 44-50 at halftime. And I thought mainly just we had blown a couple of opportunities to make some open threes to get, tied or right there in the game. We were only down by 6, and we weren't down by too much in that first half. But just to prove my point about Zion, in the first quarter, he was 1 for 4 and only had 2 points. And PJ Tucker had stripped him twice towards the end of that first quarter. So really good defense. And then Kawhi had 9 points in the first. PG had 6. And part of it was PG turning the corner. When Larry Nance was in, he was in drop coverage to start the game. And PG turned the corner and got a mid-range off a screen and a layup. And then when they blitzed, he found Zoo in those short roll situations. And at times, Jonas Valanciunas did come out to the level of the screen with Bones and with PG. And there was one time with Bones, he created a turnover with that early in the game where Bones threw it out of bounds. But besides the several missed threes, I thought we were playing pretty well. PJ Tucker, Daniel Tice, Amir Coffey, and Norm came in towards the end of the first quarter to end that quarter with Kawhi. And as I was mentioning about Paul George, he was really torching their drop coverage. He really was. And when they saw that, they adjusted to a blitz with Najee Marshall or Jose Alvarado on the ball against Paul George and to try to get the ball out of his hands. And I think we shot decently from 3 in the game, 36%. It's a little bit below our season average. The Pelicans shot 37% and only made 1 more, so very similar ballpark there. And then shooting only separated by 0.2%. We shot 48%. They shot 48%. The Clippers, on the other hand, or should I say the Clippers in particular, we shot 10 less shots than the Pels and 1 less free throw. What does that come down to? Well, we had 5 offensive rebounds. They had 9. We had 15 turnovers, and they had 9. So taking care of the ball and rebounding, that is the difference in the game besides the Zion thing. You need to win the possession battle. That's something that Ty Lue was preaching in the beginning of the season, and I feel like we've gotten away from it to an extent. There was a possession in the fourth quarter where we allowed them to get 2 offensive rebounds on 1 play, and I was very disappointed. Just a little bit of a lack of effort there. And I'm not saying the game was a lack of effort, but I just thought in spurts we'd just get outworked. And I think partially it's because the Pelicans, and this is the problem with this matchup, it's not just Zion. They have a lot of athleticism and youth, and we are old and slow. And even if you add James Harden, it doesn't change that. He only adds to the old and slow. Westbrook, different. He's old, but he ain't slow. So, yeah, we could have definitely used Russ. And the last time we played these guys and beat them in New Orleans, Russ was a catalyst, as Brian Seaman was saying in the broadcast. But their athleticism bothers us. We did a good job on Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum in this game. Brandon Ingram shot 4 for 12. He had 13 points, but I will say his passing has improved tremendously. There were times we were doubling him, and he did a great job moving the ball. 5 rebounds, 7 assists for him. But 4 for 12, you'll absolutely take that. And then CJ McCollum, only 11 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, though. So he did a little bit of everything, but 5 for 13 from the field and 1 for 7 from 3. You hold CJ and Ingram to a combined 24 points. Theoretically, you should be in a good spot to win the game, but we weren't. And partially in that second quarter, we only scored 22 points. And we only scored 22 points in the first quarter as well. So our offense in that first half wasn't exactly great. But that being said, you don't have James Harden. You don't have Russell Westbrook. Especially James Harden makes a huge difference. He is our engine on offense. So that hurt to a degree, but we got some really good looks. Terrence Mann gave me a scare when he headed to the locker room with a sprained ankle on a really nice finish that he had, but thankfully he was able to come back in the game. As far as the Pelicans' defensive strategies, when we went for Kawhi, trying to go at smaller defenders, CJ was not switching on to Kawhi. He was just showing and recovering. And, the 2-1-3 duo saw a lot of bodies in this game. You had Ingram guarding Paul George, and we did the same the other way. Amir was guarding Ingram when Terrence was out of the game, and PG was guarding CJ. But the moral of the story is, I think the Pelicans have more wings like Najee Marshall, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram to throw at 2-1-3 than we have to throw anyone at Zion. Yeah, we put PJ Tucker in, and he did a decent job. But at the end of the day, it's just one guy. And to guard guys in the NBA today with all these pick and rolls, you need multiple bodies. And we don't really have multiple bodies. We may not even have one body to guard Zion. So it was tough. And despite Paul George having 17 points in the first half, and he had 26 points in the game on 10 for 21 shooting, Kawhi had 23 points on 8 for 15 shooting. So you get basically 50 points from your duo, 49 overall. But Zion has 34 on 14 for 21 shooting, and every field goal attempt was in the paint. So he dominated us on the inside, and he was the best player on the floor. And that's mainly the reason they won. They had the best player on the floor. Their supporting cast was a little bit better because they were whole. We weren't. So I don't even think it was that bad of a loss. I really don't. The Pelicans are a good team. It's simple as that. They're a good team and a tough matchup for us. Now, if you want me to talk about how do I feel about them in the playoffs, maybe we'll save that for another episode. But coming up, going to be talking about one of the positives, and that's Paul George playing really well in these back-to-backs. Going to be talking about that coming up. So the Clippers losing this one to the Pelicans, 112-104. We actually won the third quarter, 36-32, so a fairly high-scoring one. Shots started to fall in that second half for both teams, mainly the Pels, though, to me. They scored 62 points in the half. We scored 60, so both teams scored a lot in the second half, I guess. Just always feels like the other team is doing better than they are because I'm watching it from our team's perspective. But yeah, we got outscored 30-24 in the fourth, and ultimately that kind of pulled the Pels away. As far as some strategy things, PJ Tucker came in for Paul George with about 2 minutes and 25 seconds left in the second quarter. And then we immediately put Paul George back in so PJ could guard Zion, then Paul George could guard Ingram, and Kawhi could guard CJ. And it was funny because we put PJ Tucker in, and he immediately got scored on by Zion and then turned the ball over. And I was like, God, if you're going to be in, you better do something good. If you're in to guard Zion, you better show some resistance. But for the most part, he did. And I'm really happy with the way PJ played in this game. And he actually started in place of Terrence Mann in that third quarter because, again, Terrence Mann had that ankle injury, and he only played 18 minutes. But when he came back in the game, he ended up making a three, which was his only three-point attempt of the game. So Terrence Mann, he still is playing pretty well since the All-Star break. I mean, he really is. 9 points for him in the game, 4 rebounds on 3 for 5 shooting, and 1 for 1 from 3 and 2 for 2 from the line. So he had a 60, 100, 100 game. I'll take the 9 points. He was a +3, but he only played 18 minutes. And I honestly think we did miss his athleticism towards the end of the game. But I understand what Ty's process was. You have to have 2-1-3 in, and then you wanted to have Zoo and PJ in for the size against Zion. And Norman Powell is your guy that you close games with. He just wasn't really hitting from 3 in this game. But, yeah, obviously I'm always pro more Terrence, but maybe this just wasn't his game. But 18 minutes is still not great. I didn't check Twitter or anything to see if he's injured or if he's not going to play on Sunday, but I hope he's suiting up. He is a very durable player. So, as far as the third quarter, Zion was attacking that 4-5 pick and roll endlessly the entire second half, which was try to get Zubats on the switch. And we've seen in the past him abuse Zubats, turning the corner on him and throwing up these amazing finishes. I mean, he has such a great layup package, finishing package at the rim. His touch is fantastic, and he's really explosive. He can go right into your chest and get to the line because it's so hard to guard him without fouling. In this game, he led the game, obviously, in free throw attempts with 10, and he made 6 of them. But yeah, 34 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, and here we go on the defensive end. 3 steals and a block. So Zion was very active, and he shot 66% from the field, 14 for 21, and all his shots came in the paint. So tough to guard that. What can we do about it? I don't really know. I don't really know. Double him hard. The thing is, if you double him hard with 2 bigs, who's on the dunker spot? We're making a deep rotation. We're leaving someone wide open for 3. It's a real problem. The best we can do is try our best to get physical and contest, which is what they were trying to do, but didn't really work that well. Brandon Ingram was guarding Kawhi in that third quarter. Herb Jones started guarding Paul George because he was playing better than Kawhi was. Not to say Kawhi wasn't playing well, but Paul was playing great. As I said, 17 points in the first half. And a lot of it came from starting, again, with a more aggressive mindset. Of course, it's reading the defense, but you see it there in drop coverage, don't settle. Go right to the rim. He did that. They're blitzing. Got to make some passes over the top. He did turn the ball over twice. That's not too much for him, considering he is the main ball handler, him and Kawhi, without Russ and Harden. Of course, Bones is there as well. And he was one of the people that just could not make his threes, really. 1 for 6 from 3, Bones Highland. He did not shoot well in this game. I actually think his defense was pretty good. He didn't get abused much. He was holding his own. He got into the passing lanes. He had 2 steals and a block. But he only had 5 points on 2 for 9 shooting and 1 for 6 from 3 to go along with 2 turnovers in 24 minutes. So great game against Chicago. Not so great against the Pelicans. And again, he's a backup point guard to me, Bones. He's not a starting point guard against a team like that. So, he's just playing a role that's a little too big, and that's what we need him to do right now. And it was unfortunate he couldn't make some of those open threes. But the Pelicans made a run in that third quarter. It was capped off by, and by the way, they were doubling Kawhi in the post, and they were leaving PJ Tucker open, and starting in the third. But Herb Jones had this block on Paul George. My jaw literally dropped. I mean, it looked like Paul had a wide open 3. Herb Jones had a running start to close out, and he swatted it so hard, went down the other way, and he got a dunk. And that put them up 11. And it's funny because we actually weathered the storm. Terrence came back in, did okay. We actually went with Mason Plumlee instead of Daniel Tice. I think that was partially to just go with a little bit more size, even though, again, I don't think Mason Plumlee defends the rim any better than Tice. Tice played 7 minutes and had a donut, 1 rebound. That was the only category he registered in, that and fouls with 1 foul. He was 0 for 2 from the field and 0 for 1 from 3 in 7 minutes. Plumlee did a little bit better. He got an and 1. 3 points and 2 rebounds on 1 for 1 shooting, and he made the free throw in 6 minutes. He did have a turnover, though, making the wrong read on a 4-on-3, because, again, they were throwing 2 out there at Paul. He was getting the ball to the big man. There was one time where he hit the baseline cutter instead of the wide open wing, so just a bad read by Mason. But I don't think that having Mason in for 6 minutes instead of Tice made any difference in the game, really. By the way, Norman Powell finally got going a bit in that third, came in and hit 2 threes, and that really helped the Clippers get back in it. Amir Coffey at the end of the third quarter makes a 3 to tie it at 80, and then very poor transition defense. And I have to say, transition defense in the second half was bad the whole way. That's been a thing for both LA teams because they're on the older side. They're not good at this season. And I say both LA teams because those are the teams I watch the most. Neither of them get back in transition. And as far as what we care about, the Clippers, so a lot of times it's just lack of communication and then just I'll say this. Harden and Russ, as great of a defender as Russ can be sometimes, he doesn't get back a lot, especially when he misses layups. Harden is just lazy getting back in transition, period, for the most part. We need to be a little bit better about that, but a lot of it's talking and just hustling. And I did not like where we were at. To have Zion in 2 seconds or 4 seconds beat 3 defenders down the court and score. I know he was going full speed and it was a tough finish, but you can't allow that. You just can't. It's momentum going into the fourth. Zion's getting turned. The building's getting rocking. Just can't have that. So we were down 82 to 80 going into the fourth, and they went up by 9. And again, it was quick attacks in transition. Zoo having his hands full with Zion. We're throwing extra bodies at him. Their shooters are starting to hit, particularly Trey Murphy, who had, let me see how many. buckets he had in the second half. Trey Murphy, he was 2 for 6 from 3, actually. So 8 points in the second half. Larry Nance really killed us in that second half. He came in that fourth quarter, and it offered like a good player in that dunker spot. So we were doubling Zion or showing help, and he was kicking it out to a shooter. We were running them off the line. That was the clear game plan that Ty Lue told them, because it was very evident. They were running guys off the line, but they did a great job of feeding Larry Nance the dunker and scoring. Like, again, if there's a guy that's being double-teamed, this applies to any era of basketball you watch. If there's a guy being double-teamed, hard doubled like that, someone's going to be open. Your rotation's got to be crisp. But if the offense executes, you are at their mercy. That's what happens when you have a matchup problem. So that's what we're at. And we needed our offense to be a little bit better. In the fourth quarter, Paul George, he still hit 2 tough threes in a row. I mean, this guy, he was hooping. He was absolutely hooping, but he didn't shoot that well in the fourth. And he and Norm played the entire quarter. Paul had 8 points on 3 for 8 shooting, 2 for 4 from 3 in the fourth. So those were the 2 threes I was referring to, but only shot 37.5% in that quarter. And then Kawhi, he played the last 7 minutes and 14 seconds of the game, and he only went 1 for 3 in the fourth. So again, you wish you could have gotten a little better from Kawhi. I did not like that 3 he took in transition when it was 100 to 105 contested. I don't know why he took that so early in the shot clock. We could have gotten such a better shot. Very rare low IQ decision by Kawhi, because he's usually the smartest player on the court. But by the way, Nance was blitzing Paul George. It caused some problems. And then the last thing we did was we had the Clips go big when Zion was at the 5. So we had PJ and Zoo in, and it kind of left Zoo in an awkward position guarding Herb Jones, and Zion kept trying to get the switch, but PJ was starting to go under the screens, so they weren't getting too much of an advantage there. That's when we started getting back in it and almost came back when it was like 100 to 105. Jones was on Zoo in the other end, but we never looked at him like that. We went really strictly towards PG and Kawhi. And by the way, Norm had a scare as well. Herb Jones fell on his ankle, and I thought he was gone, but he came back. And I don't know anything about if he's going to play on Sunday or not, but 2 guys having their ankles sprained in the same game is tough. And then, as I said, the game kind of ended. We were running guys off the line due to Zion getting doubled and finding shooters, and then they would feed Larry Nance for buckets. So it was tough. Zion had 7 in the fourth. Brandon Ingram had 5 in the fourth. Trey Murphy had 8 in the fourth. So there you go. Nance had 4. They were a good team in the fourth. What can I say? It's not the end of the world. But again, Paul George, 26 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal and a block. He did turn the ball over twice, but he shot 10 for 21 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3. And you know what? I don't have too much of a problem with it. In 41 minutes of play, PG played really well in this back-to-back, and I think this could give him some good confidence going forward, because as I said, he was in a real slump, but I said keep the faith in him. Keep the faith. He'll come good, so it's good to see that. Coming up, going to be talking more about the other guys' stat lines in the game, other guys' individual performances, and then looking towards the game against Atlanta. But moral of the story, tough game, tough matchup. We were shorthanded, and the Pelicans are a rough matchup for us. We can talk about the potential of playing them in the playoffs down the line, but we got other games to play, and we also didn't have Harden and Westbrook, and I want everyone to not lose sight of that. It was not even a terrible performance. They were just a bit better. And Zion is a problem. Coming up, going to be talking about the stat lines and the Hawks game. All right, so the Pelicans beating the Clippers 112 to 104. They win the season series 3-1, which means they own the tiebreaker. And now they're only 2 games below us in the standings at the 5 seed. So they're really on our tail. So we need to really pick it up. Clippers are 20-14 away from home. It's crazy how that Grammy trip helped our road record so much. And we are 42-24 on the season. So again, 16 games remaining. To have the best record in franchise history, to get it, the sole possession of it, we need to go 16-0. That's not happening. If we go 15-1, we tie the best record in franchise history with the 2014 Clips. If we go 13-3, if we go 14-2, we tie the second best record with the 2013 and 2015 Clips. And then if we win 12 of these last couple, or 13 or 12 of them, then we'll have the third best record in franchise history. So that should be the goal. Let's get the third best record in franchise history. Kawhi Leonard, I thought he played pretty well. I know they started double teaming him in the second half more, but again, sometimes I wish he had a slightly higher appetite for scoring, and I think in the playoffs that's going to come. But Paul George was the guy. He had it going in this game. I don't mind that he shot more than Kawhi, but without Harden, for Kawhi to only shoot 15 times, and especially when he's shooting efficiently, 8 for 15, I wanted to shoot a little more. 1 for 3 from 3, 6 for 6 from the foul line. 23 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks, and a turnover. My thing with Kawhi is he only shot 3 times in the fourth, and a large reason is because with that strategy of playing Kawhi the whole third and then Paul George the whole fourth, what ends up happening is Paul George will get a rhythm, and then when Kawhi comes back in, he's not trying to disturb that. So then he doesn't really find a rhythm. And I still think Kawhi is our best closer, but I want Paul George taking the final shot, if that makes sense. Like in the last 5 minutes, I want the ball in Kawhi's hands. But the last shot, I want Paul George. Because Paul George has the easiest time on our team getting shots off. Like he rarely gets blocked. And that's why that Herb Jones thing was so impressive. But by the way, Kawhi had 10 points in the third. 6 of them came from the line. So all his free throw attempts were in the third quarter. But he only shot 6 shots in the second half. So you want more. Zubac, I thought he was okay. And let me say why I say that. I thought he did a good job in the short roll offensively, finishing well. So like offensively, I really had no issue with him. 9 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Defensively, though, he can't guard Zion. I don't think that's really his fault, but he just can't. And he didn't offer much resistance at the rim compared to normal. So he was solid. Bones Highland, as I already mentioned, was 2 for 9. He had a rough one. Terrence Mann, 9 points on 3 for 5 shooting. Already talked about PJ Tucker, Tyson Plumlee. Amir Coffey and Norman Powell. Amir Coffey was fine. I thought he was pretty good. 8 points, 3 rebounds, 3 dimes. He had 2 turnovers, though, and was a team worst minus 14, but I would ignore that. 3 for 5 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3. So he had an efficient game, 60% from the field and 50 from 3. And then Norman Powell just didn't make his 3 ball, and we really needed a little bit more without James Harden, without Russ. But he was okay. 15 points, 4 for 9 from the field, so that's efficient, but 2 for 6 from 3, and he shoots better than that normally. 5 for 5 from the line. So Norm, he's consistent, though. He'll get you 13 to 17 every single night. 13 through 18 even. 13 plus. So we'll be back. I don't think there's too much to worry about. I think if you want to worry about the Pelicans in the playoffs, it's a different discussion, but for all we know, we might not see them again for the rest of the season, so I'm not going to waste my breath. Don't be too mad about that loss, Clipper Nation, all I'm saying. Now, Atlanta, very short-handed team we're playing Sunday. I'll be in attendance. It'll be my 23rd game, I believe, of the season. It might be 22nd. I think it's 23rd, which is tying my all-time record for regular season. But we got to win, and I think we should win handedly. And you could potentially rest James Harden again, but it's been 2 games in a row. Let's get him back on the court because apparently he's still not fully injured. I know he's dealing with a little shoulder thing, but it's not something that he can't play through, I don't believe. So we should just play him. Let's make a statement, get back to winning ways, and then we're 43-24. 15 games left. Let's do it. You know what the most important thing is? Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are healthy right now at this stage of the season, and we're in a position at a top 4 seed. Like, all this knocking has worked. Kawhi Leonard is healthy right now, and so is Paul George. And they had little scares, nicks and bruises, but that's what we expected before the season. They're not going to play every game, but as long as they don't have any serious injuries, and again, I'm still knocking because who knows, it's all about the playoffs, we'll be okay. We'll be a contender. It's just a matter of sharpening the knife now, sharpening the tools. Atlanta should not be a problem. They have DeJounte Murray. We need Terrence Mann to do a good job. Hopefully Terrence is playing. And let's get them out of there. Their defense is non-existent. That's all I got. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more Clipper and NBA content. And by the way, obviously there'll be a Locked On Clippers out on Monday after the Hawks game, but there will also be a vlog on my YouTube channel of my experience at the Hawks game on Sunday night. So please check that out. Let me know in the comments, what do you think a series between the Pelicans and the Clippers would go? Because it doesn't look very good right now. The age-old proverb continues, go Clippers.